Hi friends, welcome to day 2 of our Easter stitch along. Today we are going to be working on our 3 woven wheels. We're going to be using color 3774 and we're going to be using 6 strands of this. So let's get stitching. Alright, I have my 6 strands and I am ready to start stitching this woven wheel. So what we're going to do is come in through the back and make a little back stitch on each one of these 5 spokes. So I'm going to pull this all the way through and then go right down at the bottom of this. And when you pull this through, you don't want to pull it too tight. You want it to be just a little loose because later we're going to be weaving in and out of these spokes. And so to keep it loose will make it a little bit easier for you. If it's too tight, it just makes it hard to slide your needle under it. Okay, going to the right. Doesn't really matter, you could go to the left if you wanted to. Alright, so I have my 5 spokes stitched and now we can work on the top portion of the flower. So I'm going to bring my needle up right next to one of these spokes. It doesn't matter which one. I try not to go too far away from where I just previously stitched because you don't want to waste any floss in the back. Pull that all the way through. And then what we're going to be doing is just weaving in and out each one of these spokes. So I'm right next to this first one. I'm going to go over, under, over, under, over, under, and just keep doing that over and over and over again until we have finished the flower. So let's start on that and then I can give you a few more tips. And I actually, when I do the woven wheels, I prefer not to have my hoop stand because it just makes it a little bit harder for me to see what I'm doing. But for the videoing purposes, I'm going to have it on here just for a little bit and then I'll probably take it off. Okay, so I just went under, I'm going to go over and go under this one. And these very first few weaves in and out, you really want to make sure you're not pulling your floss too tight because in the beginning, if you pull too tight, it'll end up squeezing in over those French knots and you don't want that. Okay, so over, under, over, under. And your woven wheel can be as tight or as fluffy as you like. So at this point, I can put my finger kind of in the middle a little bit and just pull it just a little bit. So that way it helps bring in that tightness. I try not to pull too tight because I do like for mine to be just a little bit fluffier. But if you want it to be really tight, you just kind of put your finger here and just like pull this tight. Okay, so I'm over, under, over, under. And again, just trying to keep that same tightness all the way through. And just keep in mind, if you do decide you want a very tight flower, which is perfectly fine, you will end up using more floss. And so you'll have wanted to pull more floss in the beginning. Or you can add afterwards, but it's not too tricky, but it is a little bit tricky. All right, so we're just going to keep doing this. I'm going to take it off of my stand and record me holding it by hand just because it's a little bit easier for me, and then I'll come back and talk on how to finish this woven wheel. All right, so what you may have noticed is as you're getting closer to the end, it's getting a little bit harder to see those spokes, which is totally fine. And that's totally normal because you're trying to cover all those spokes. So you don't want to be able to see them. And that's one of the reasons why I like to turn my hoop around a lot so I can really see like how much have I covered. And so the hoop stand makes that a little bit harder. So I will say again, I don't prefer using the hoop stand when I am doing those woven wheels. Another thing to note is as I am getting closer to the end and I'm covering those last bit of spokes, I do want to make sure I'm not tightening my floss quite as much, because if you end up tightening too much on one side and revealing too much spoke on another side, you might end up having to add some more rounds, but it's going to be harder because some spokes are still covered and some are not as covered as much. So I try to be a little bit looser with my stitches. So tighter in the beginning, a little bit looser as you get further out. Now, in order to finish the woven wheel, depending on the last spot you just came out, the spot that you are, the next spoke that you're going to go over, that's where you're going to come down at. So here for me, right at this top, I think you can see that. Right at this top, you can see that top spoke of mine. I'm going to just slip my needle right under that and through the back, okay? And this is another important thing. This might be why people don't like woven wheels so much. I'm realizing there's a lot of little details. When you're doing this, do it very, very gently. If you all of a sudden pull very tight, you're going to tighten your woven wheel without realizing it. So pull that just gently enough. Make sure it's actually all the way in there, and then turn your piece over. I'm going to try and redeem myself with my cutting yesterday and tying my knot. Leave plenty of room. And when you tie this knot, tie it very gently. Again, if you end up tightening this too much, you're going to reveal the spokes, and then you might have to go back and do some more stitching. And this is also what you would do if you end up running out of floss without covering all of your spokes, is you would just tie off, and then you would grab a new arm length of floss, and you'd start up right where you finish, like bring up through the back, right where you finished, and then just keep going. So for example, if I had run out of floss and I needed to come back up, what I would do is just come right back up at the top and then just keep going round and round until I was done. So that's your woven wheel. We're going to do all 3 today. I'm going to let you do those other 2 on your own time so that this video is not too long, and then we will come back tomorrow and start working on the inside portion of our banner here. So see you tomorrow.